The night was restless, as if the very air around Julia was charged with a strange electricity. She lay in her darkened room, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with the fragments of dreams she barely remembered. Every night, she tried the same thing: control her dreams, bend them to her will, shape them into the perfect fantasy. It had started as a curiosity, a simple experiment to escape reality, but it had grown into an obsession. She believed that if she could master her dreams, she could master her life, her fears, her regrets. And yet, every morning, she woke with a haunting sense of unease, as though the part of her she couldn't control was silently mocking her efforts. Before we dive deeper into Julia's journey, take a moment to like this video, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel if you believe in kindness, second chances, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps these stories reach those who need them most. Julia's life by day was a mirror of her struggles at night. She worked in a quiet office, filling reports and attending meetings, always careful, always cautious, never taking risks. She had friends, but none who truly understood the restless energy that burned in her chest. She had a boyfriend, Mark, who loved her with quiet devotion, but even he couldn't penetrate the walls she built around herself. The dreams, she thought, were the only place where she could be free. But freedom, its image, demanded a price. The more she tried to control her dreams, the more they twisted into something unpredictable, something dark. Faces from her past appeared unbidden, conversations she never had but feared, regrets she could no longer ignore. One night, she found herself standing in a vast, endless forest, the trees towering like silent sentinels under a moonless sky. At first, she tried to dictate what should happen, to turn the forest into a peaceful sanctuary. But the forest had its own mind. Shadows twisted at the edges of her vision, whispers brushed against her ears, and the further she pressed, the more the dream resisted. She felt panic rising, a tightness in her chest that made it hard to breathe. Julia ran, not knowing where she was going, only that she had to escape the forces she thought she could control. And yet, even as she ran, there was a strange clarity, a realization that her need to dominate her dreams mirrored her life, her relentless striving for perfection, for control over every outcome. As weeks turned into months, the line between her dreams and waking life blurred. Julia's colleagues noticed her distracted eyes, her restless movements. Mark became concerned as she withdrew further, talking less, sleeping in fits and starts, always haunted by the visions she tried so hard to contain. One night, exhausted and trembling, she collapsed on her bed, allowing herself to surrender. Instead of commanding her dream, she let it unfold, step by step, without interference. She wandered through the forest, noticed the small details, the way the leaves caught the moonlight, the distant sound of a river, the subtle scent of wildflowers she couldn't identify. She realized she could observe, participate, and still feel alive without forcing the outcome. It was in that surrender that Julia began to find unexpected lessons. The dreams, once her battlegrounds, became teachers. She confronted versions of herself she had denied, the SHY, anxious girl who feared rejection, the angry young woman who carried grudges, the hopeful child who still believed in magic and kindness. Each figure spoke in gestures, in images, in echoes of memory. Through them, Julia learned patience, empathy, and the importance of letting life flow rather than trying to control every detail. She carried these lessons into her waking life, noticing small joys she had overlooked, reaching out to friends she had neglected, apologizing where she had been harsh, opening her heart where she had built walls. Then came the night that would change everything. Julia awoke in a dream unlike any before. She stood in the middle of a city bathed in golden light, streets empty, yet alive with possibility. She no longer tried to direct the dream. Instead, she listened, moved, and felt. Faces appeared, Mark, her friends, strangers she recognized from fleeting moments, and each one brought with it a sense of forgiveness, understanding, and warmth. She realized that the true control she sought was never about bending reality to her will, but about understanding and embracing it. She awoke with tears streaming down her face, not from fear or frustration, but from a deep, soul-aching clarity that life, like dreams, is a dance between surrender and intention. Julia's journey didn't end with that night. She continued to dream, but no longer with the desperate need to dominate. She let the images come and go, exploring the worlds that appeared, learning lessons she couldn't have learned otherwise. She started painting the visions she saw, writing them down, sharing the stories with others who felt lost in the maze of control and perfection. Her relationships deepened, her laughter became genuine again, and for the first time in years, she felt at peace. If this story has touched your heart, if Julia's journey resonates with the struggles you've faced in your own life, I encourage you to engage with this video. Like, comment, share, and subscribe, and help spread the message that sometimes letting go is the bravest act of all. And before we end, leave a comment telling us about a dream that changed you, or a moment in your life where surrender brought you clarity. You never know whose heart it might touch. The world outside Julia's window was silent, yet inside her mind, a storm raged, a tempest born from years of trying to bend the impossible to her will. Each night she lay in her bed, anticipating the moment when sleep would carry her into the limitless expanse of her own imagination. Her obsession had begun innocuously, a desire to dream vividly, to live stories she couldn't in daylight. But soon, it became a nightly ritual, a desperate grasp at perfection, a relentless effort to control the uncontrollable. She tried to conjure the people she loved, to rewrite moments she regretted, to experience victories she had earned. Yet, no matter how hard she tried, the dreams twisted away, darker and more chaotic than before. It was as though some unseen force, a reflection of her own fears, had begun to resist her. Julia's waking life mirrored the turmoil of her nights. Each day felt like walking a tightrope over a chasm of expectations, her own and those of the world around her. Her apartment, once a sanctuary, felt claustrophobic. Her friends' laughter sounded distant, as if she were observing from behind a glass wall. Mark, her partner, tried to reach her with soft words and gentle gestures, but even he could not breach the fortress of anxiety and obsession she had built. At work, she performed flawlessly, yet beneath the surface, she was unraveling. And each night, as she sank into the embrace of sleep, she carried with her the weight of control, hoping to steer her dreams like a captain commands a ship, only to find herself tossed by currents she could not navigate. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day, Julia entered a dream unlike any she had experienced. She found herself in a vast, fog-shrouded city, streets twisting and bending as though the ground beneath her had no loyalty to logic or reason. She tried, instinctively, to direct the scene, a safe path, a familiar friend, a comforting light. But the dream resisted, the city curling around her attempts like smoke slipping through her fingers. Panic gripped her chest, but amidst the chaos, a voice, a whispering, gentle cadence, echoed in her mind, "Let go." The simplicity of it, the purity of it, struck her more deeply than she could have imagined. For the first time, Julia paused. She stopped trying to wrest control and let the city unfold, step by step, allowing herself to simply move, to observe, to feel. In that moment, something extraordinary began to happen. The chaos of the net, colors emerged, vibrant and alive, weaving through the streets like reeds of possibility. Shadows transformed into shapes she could recognize, faces from her past, people she had lost touch with, moments of joy she had overlooked. Each encounter was fleeting, yet each left a mark, a lesson encoded in the language of the subconscious. Julia realized that by trying to dominate her dreams, she had been denying herself the richness of experience, the quiet wisdom that comes from surrender. She began to understand that dreams, like life, are not meant to be conquered, they are meant to be lived. Weeks passed, and Julia continued to explore her nightly journeys, but her approach had changed. She observed, she felt, she listened. The dreams were no longer battlegrounds but sanctuaries, spaces where she could confront her fears without being consumed by them. She met versions of herself she had ignored, the frightened girl who longed for approval, the angry teenager who clung to grudges, the hopeful child who still believed in miracles. Each encounter left her lighter, more compassionate, more alive. Slowly, the walls she had erected around her waking life began to crumble. She reached out to old friends, mended fractured relationships, and allowed herself to feel deeply rather than control relentlessly. One night, in the midst of a dream, she arrived at a beach bathed in the golden west of a setting sun, waves rolling gently onto the shore. For the first time, she didn't try to change anything. She walked barefoot along the sand, feeling the cool water lap against her skin, breathing in the scent of salt and possibility. The people she loved appeared beside her, smiling, no words needed. Julia understood then that control had never been the point. The point was trust, trust in herself, trust in life, trust in the currents that carried her through both dreams and reality. She awoke with tears streaming down her face, a profound peace settling in her chest, a clarity she had never known before. If this story resonates with you, if Julia's journey touches something deep within your heart, please take a moment to like this video, comment, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. And before we end, leave a comment sharing a dream or a moment that changed your perspective. Your story could inspire someone else in ways you cannot imagine. Julia's life transformed, not because she gained control, but because she learned to surrender, to embrace uncertainty, and to trust the flow of life. She painted the visions of her dreams, she wrote down the lessons, she connected with people on a deeper level, and she found joy in moments that once seemed ordinary. Her nights were no longer a battlefield but a canvas, and her days were no longer about perfection but about living fully. In letting go, Julia discovered freedom, and in freedom, she discovered herself. And in that truth, perhaps, lies the most profound lesson for all of us. Sometimes the bravest act is not to control, but to let life, and dreams, unfold. The rain tapped softly against the window, a rhythmic whisper that seemed to echo the restless thoughts swirling in Julia's mind. Her apartment felt like a cage tonight, familiar yet suffocating, and she could not remember the last time she had slept without tossing and turning. Each night, she attempted the same experiment, to master her dreams, to direct them with precision, to live out the life she could never grasp by daylight. At first, it had seemed harmless, even intriguing. She had read books on lucid dreaming, watched seminars, taken notes on techniques, all in pursuit of ultimate control over her inner world. But now, the THR had curdled into obsession. Her dreams resisted her. They twisted into nightmares she could not escape, presenting fears she had long buried, regrets she refused to confront, and versions of herself she did not recognize. Her desire to dominate her dreams had become a mirror of her desire to dominate her life, and she was losing both battles. Before we continue, if you believe in second chances, kindness, and the power of transformation, pause for a moment to like this video, comment, share, and subscribe. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your voice matters here, and it helps these stories reach those who need hope most. Julia's days blurred into nights of unrest. At work, she performed flawlessly, her efficiency admired by colleagues, but her eyes betrayed the exhaustion, the inner turmoil that could not be hidden. Mark, her boyfriend, noticed the subtle changes, her withdrawn manner, the haunted expression she carried, the trembling excitement when she spoke of dreams that felt too real. He wanted to reach her, to pull her back from the precipice of obsession, but she recoiled, convinced that the answers lay in her dreams, and only there. Each night, she descended into a labyrinth of her own creation, sprawling cities with streets that bent impossibly, forests that whispered her deepest fears, faces she knew yet could not place, all taunting her with a cruel reflection of her mind. She tried to steer them, to rewrite the narrative, to impose order, but the more she tried, the more uncontrollable the dreams became. One night, exhausted and trembling, Julia surrendered. She stopped trying to force the dream into submission and instead allowed herself to drift, to observe, to be a passenger rather than a pilot. She found herself on a cliff overlooking a stormy sea, the waves crashing with violent majesty, lightning illuminating the horizon. And in that moment, she felt a strange serenity. She realized that control had never been the point. The dream was not a tool to bend reality. It was a reflection, a guide, a mirror showing her the patterns of her fears, her anxieties, and her hidden hopes. For the first time, she did not flee from the storm or demand it to calm. She simply stood, feeling the wind and rain, acknowledging her fear without judgment. As she learned to let go, the dreams changed. The forests no longer threatened her, the cities no longer twisted into chaos. She began to see lessons hidden in the imagery, insights into herself that daylight had never revealed. Faces from her past, friends, family, mentors, even strangers, appeared to remind her of love she had forgotten, kindness she had ignored, and moments of courage she had overlooked. She began to understand that life's unpredictability was not an enemy to fight against but a rhythm to embrace. She carried these lessons into the waking world, noticing beauty in ordinary moments, connecting more deeply with Mark, reaching out to friends she had neglected, and finding joy in small victories rather than grand triumphs. Then came the dream that changed everything. Julia walked into a vast meadow bathed in golden sunlight, flowers swaying gently in the breeze, a river reflecting the sky like a sheet of glass. She no longer attempted to direct the scene, she simply wandered, breathing in the peace, feeling the warm mth of the sun on her skin. Figures emerged, Mark, friends, and strangers alike, and each greeted her with a smile full of understanding and forgiveness. The clarity that washed over her was overwhelming. She realized that control was an illusion, that life's beauty existed not in forcing outcomes but in embracing the journey, with all its uncertainty, pain, and wonder. She awoke with tears on her cheeks, but this time, they were tears of release, of healing, and of hope. If this story touched your heart, if Julia's struggle and her awakening resonated with something inside you, I ask you to engage with this video. Like, comment, share, and subscribe, not just to support the channel but to honor the message of courage, surrender, and self-discovery. Before we finish, leave a comment sharing a dream or a moment when letting go transformed your life. It might just inspire someone else to find their own freedom. Julia's nights became a sanctuary, a place of exploration rather than conquest. Her days became richer, her laughter more genuine, her connections deeper. She painted the visions of her dreams, she wrote down the lessons they taught, and she shared them with others, spreading hope and understanding. She had discovered the paradox at the heart of life. The more she tried to control it, the more it eluded her. The more she surrendered, the more alive she became. Her story reminds us that the truest freedom lies not in domination, but in trust, in our dreams, in life, and in ourselves. And in that trust, we find not only peace, but a profound capacity to love, to heal, and to grow. Julia's journey teaches us that dreams are not a playground for our desires, but a mirror reflecting the depths of our soul. By embracing them, by observing without judgment, we learn courage, compassion, and the extraordinary beauty of living fully. Control is tempting, but it is surrender that transforms. And in that transformation, we discover who we were always meant to be. Julia's nights were no longer restful, they were battlegrounds. Each evening, as darkness wrapped around her apartment, she felt both anticipation and dread, a cocktail of excitement and fear. Her life had become defined by the moments she would spend asleep, wandering into worlds where she believed she could rewrite her reality. She was obsessed with controlling her dreams, convinced that if she could master them, she could master her life, heal her regrets, and rewrite the mistakes she could not undo. The first time she succeeded in shaping a dream, it had felt miraculous, a small victory of will. But the more she tried, the more the dreams rebelled. Faces she didn't recognize stared at her accusingly. Shadows whispered her deepest insecurities. Landscapes shifted violently under her gaze, impossible and chaotic. She tried to fight it, to bend the dreams to her command, but each effort left her more exhausted, more anxious, and more haunted. Before we dive deeper into Julia's journey, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the transformative power of hope. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your voice matters, and it helps these stories reach those who need them most. By day, Julia was quiet, careful, almost invisible. Her colleagues admired her efficiency but could not see the turmoil behind her steady hands and calm expressions. Mark, her boyfriend, loved her fiercely, yet often found her distant, lost in thought, her eyes carrying the weight of unseen battles. Julia's obsession with dreams had begun to consume her. She neglected meals, skipped social gatherings, and spent hours journaling her nightly experiences. Each morning, she awoke more tired than the day before, haunted by fragments of her nocturnal journeys. The dreams were no longer an escape, they were a mirror, showing her not the perfect life she wanted, but the life she had ignored, the emotions she had buried, and the fears she refused to face. One night, exhausted beyond reason, Julia found herself standing on a cliff that overlooked an endless ocean, waves crashing violently against jagged rocks below. The sky above swirled with colors she couldn't name, violets and golds that burned like fire. She tried to control it, tried to make the storm calm, tried to summon a lighthouse or a path to safety. But the dream would not obey. The winds whipped her hair into her face, salt stung her eyes, and the roar of the ocean became almost deafening. She felt panic rise in her chest, a familiar tightness she had come to dread. And then, in the midst of the chaos, a whisper reached her ears, "Let go. Just let go." Julia froze. The words, simple and soft, carried a power she had never felt before. She closed her eyes, allowed herself to breathe, and stopped trying to dictate the dream. For the first time, she surrendered. The storm continued to rage, but she walked forward along the cliff, feeling the wind and rain against her skin, acknowledging the fear and uncertainty without resistance. And in that surrender, something miraculous happened. The storm softened, the sky shifted from violent colors to a serene twilight, and the ocean, once menacing, reflected the calm she had allowed herself to feel. Julia understood that she had been trying to control what could not be controlled, and in that struggle, she had lost herself. In the following nights, Julia's dreams transformed. She wandered through cities that glowed under neon lights, streets bending and folding like ribbons. She walked through endless forests where leaves whispered ancient secrets, rivers glimmered with light, and animals appeared as guides, not threats. Faces of people she had lost, her grandmother, a childhood friend, even strangers who had touched her life fleetingly, appeared to her, each offering a lesson or insight she had ignored. She began to understand that the dreams were not obstacles to master but teachers to learn from. They showed her her fears, her regrets, her anger, but also her courage, her hope, her capacity to forgive and to love. Julia's waking life began to shift. She reached out to friends she had abandoned, mended broken relationships, and allowed herself to feel, fully and openly, without judgment. She started writing, chronicling her nightly journeys, each sequence of the dream becoming a parable of healing and self-discovery. She painted the visions that had once terrified her, transforming nightmares into expressions of beauty. She laughed more freely, cried more openly, and discovered the subtle joys of life she had overlooked for so long. Then came the dream that would redefine everything. Julia found herself in a vast meadow, the sky painted in shades of gold and amber, flowers swaying gently in the breeze, a river reflecting the sunlight like molten glass. She walked barefoot, feeling the warm mth of the earth, the gentle wind caressing her face. Figures appeared, Mark, her friends, her family, and even strangers whose kindness had touched her life. Each figure radiated understanding, forgiveness, and love. For the first time, Julia realized that the true mastery she had been seeking was not in controlling events or bending reality, but in embracing uncertainty, trusting herself, and surrendering to life's flow. She awoke with tears streaking her cheeks, her heart overflowing with peace, clarity, and hope. If Julia's journey has touched your heart, I urge you to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your engagement spreads this story of courage and healing, reminding others that sometimes surrender is the bravest act of all. And before we end, please leave a comment sharing a dream or a moment in your life when letting go transformed you. It could inspire someone who desperately needs to hear it. Julia's nights became a sanctuary, a space for exploration rather than conquest. Her days blossomed with joy, her laughter genuine, her relationships deep and fulfilling. She continued to paint, write, and share her insights, helping others understand that the struggle for control often blinds us to the beauty of surrender. She had discovered the paradox at the heart of life: the more she tried to dominate it, the more it eluded her. The more she let go, the freer she became. In trusting her dreams, she had learned to trust herself, and in that trust, she discovered not just peace, but love, courage, and a profound capacity for life. Julia's story reminds us that our dreams are mirrors, not playgrounds. They reflect our fears, our hopes, our hidden truths. By observing them, surrendering to them, and learning from them, we uncover wisdom we cannot find in the light of day. Control is tempting, but surrender transforms. And in that transformation, we find who we were always meant to be: whole, free, and alive. Julia had always believed that dreams were windows into hidden truths, mysterious realms where the impossible could unfold. At first, her nightly adventures were simply experiments. She would close her eyes and try to guide her mind, shaping the dreamscape like clay. She imagined soaring over mountains, walking through enchanted forests, or meeting people she wished she had never lost. The exhilaration of control became addictive, a thrill that carried over into the waking hours. But over time, this fascination turned into obsession. Her attempts to dominate her dreams grew more desperate, more demanding, and every failure left her shaken. Faces appeared unbidden, people from her past, strangers with accusing eyes, and memories she thought she had buried forever. The more she tried to force the dreams, the more chaotic they became, as if the very essence of her mind resisted the control she sought. Before we dive deeper into Julia's journey, take a moment to like this video, comment, share, and subscribe if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the transformative power of hope. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps these stories reach people who need them the most. By day, Julia's life was a careful balancing act. She worked in a quiet office, where her efficiency earned her praise but not connection. Her friends noticed her growing withdrawal, and Mark, her partner, tried patiently to reach her, but she kept retreating into her mind, believing the answers lay within the landscapes of her dreams. She missed dinners, canceled outings, and spent hours meticulously journaling each fragment of her night adventures, analyzing them as if decoding a secret language. Yet no amount of writing or reflection brought her peace. The dreams, once exhilarating, had become battlegrounds where her fears, regrets, and insecurities waged constant war. One night, she awoke in a dream unlike any before. Julia stood at the edge of a cliff under a storm-darkened sky. Waves crashed violently below, roaring like untamed beasts. Lightning illuminated jagged rocks and twisted trees that grew from the cliffs like claws. Her first instinct was to command the dream, to call forth calm or summon a bridge to safety, but nothing obeyed. The storm seemed alive, aware of her attempts to control it, and it responded with greater fury. Panic gripped her chest, her heart pounded, and she realized with a sudden clarity that her obsession with control mirrored her approach to life, always pushing, always forcing, never surrendering. Then, softly, a voice whispered through the wind, carrying not judgment, but a strange calm, "Let go. Just let go." Julia hesitated, trembling, but the words struck her with the force of revelation. For the first time, she stopped struggling. She allowed herself to feel the storm rather than fight it, to walk forward along the cliff despite fear. The wind splashed her face, rain stung her eyes, and yet, as she surrendered, the storm began to transform. The jagged rocks softened into cliffs of silverstone, the lightning faded into a twilight glow, and the ocean's roar became a rhythmic, soothing cadence. Julia realized that control had never been the point. The dreams, like life, were not meant to be mastered, they were meant to be experienced, observed, and learned from. Over the following weeks, Julia's nightly journeys became increasingly vivid and transformative. She wandered through forests with trees taller than skyscrapers, their leaves glowing faintly as if lit from within. Rivers flowed with liquid light, reflecting skies of impossible color. Animals appeared, wolves, birds, and deer, but not as threats. They guided her, nudged her toward insights she had long ignored. Faces of her childhood friends, her grandmother, and even strangers whose kindness had once touched her life appeared, each offering lessons, comfort, or a challenge she needed to confront. She came to understand that every fear she faced in the dream mirrored her waking fears: fear of failure, fear of loss, fear of being unseen or unloved. Gradually, Julia's waking life began to shift. She reconnected with friends she had ignored, apologized where she had been harsh, and began to embrace vulnerability rather than control. Her laughter became freer, her interactions more genuine, her heart lighter. Each dream now felt like a teacher, guiding her toward courage, empathy, and self-understanding. She began to paint what she saw, write what she felt, and share her experiences with those who struggled, finding in her story a new purpose. One night, Julia entered the most extraordinary dream of all. She found herself standing in a vast meadow that stretched to infinity, bathed in golden sunlight. Flowers swayed gently, the air was perfumed with a scent she could not name, and a river shimmered like liquid crystal. She walked barefoot, feeling the soft grass beneath her feet, and for the first time, she felt no fear, no need to control. Figures emerged from the sunlight: Mark, her friends, family, even strangers whose kindness had impacted her life. Each greeted her with warmth, understanding, and forgiveness. She understood then, fully and completely, that mastery of life or dreams was not about control but about trust, presence, and surrender. If this story touches your heart, I ask you to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to hear this message today. And before we finish, leave a comment telling us about a dream or a moment where letting go transformed you. It might inspire someone who needs hope more than anything. As Julia's nights continued, she explored her dreams not as battlegrounds but as sacred spaces. She encountered past regrets and future possibilities, weaving lessons of resilience, compassion, and courage into her waking life. Her days became richer, filled with laughter, meaningful connections, and joy in ordinary moments. She painted, she wrote, she lived. She realized that the more she let go, the more alive she felt, and in surrender, she discovered not weakness but profound strength. Julia's story is a reminder that dreams are not playgrounds for our desires, they are mirrors reflecting the deepest parts of our soul. They reveal fear, hope, love, and courage. True freedom does not come from control but from acceptance, trust, and embracing life's uncertainty. Julia had learned that surrender is not defeat, it is the pathway to awakening, to living fully, to discovering the love and strength within ourselves. And in that surrender, we find the profound truth. Our dreams, like life itself, are meant not to be conquered, but to be cherished, learned from, and lived. Julia had always chased the idea of control. By day, she was quiet, courteous, measured, her life a series of routines, carefully orchestrated to avoid chaos. By night, however, she ventured into a world she believed she could command, her dreams. At first, it was exhilarating. She could fly over mountains, walk through cities of impossible beauty, or relive moments she wished she could change. But soon, the excitement twisted into obsession. The dreams resisted her, as if mocking her desire for perfection. Faces she had forgotten, shadows she could not name, whispers she could not understand, all emerged, confronting her with fears she did not know she carried. The more she tried to bend the dreamscape to her will, the more it slipped away, leaving her exhausted and anxious, haunted by visions that lingered even when she woke. Before we dive deeper into Julia's journey, pause and like this video, comment, share, and subscribe if you believe in second chances, kindness, and the power of transformation. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from, your voice helps these stories reach those who need hope most. Her waking life was a mirror of her dreams. Her apartment, once a sanctuary, felt confining. Her friends' laughter seemed distant. Mark, her boyfriend, loved her deeply, yet he often found her staring through him, lost in a world only she could see. Work was a refuge she barely cared about, she performed well, but her mind was elsewhere, cataloging fragments of dreams, analyzing symbols, trying desperately to impose order on chaos. The more she sought control, the more fragmented her sense of reality became. Sleep no longer offered rest, it was a battlefield. One night, exhausted beyond reason, Julia found herself in a strange, vast forest. The trees towered impossibly high, their branches twisting like ancient serpents, leaves glowing faintly as if lit from within. She tried to direct the dream, to make it peaceful, but the forest resisted. Shadows shifted in corners of her vision, whispering secrets she could not understand. Panic rose in her chest as she ran, tripping over roots, her breath ragged. And then, in the midst of fear, she heard it, a soft, calm whisper reading through the chaos, "Let go." Julia froze. For the first time, she stopped struggling. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, allowing the forest to exist without her interference. Slowly, she noticed the details she had never seen before: a fox watching her silently, mushrooms glowing softly at her feet, a river running gently through the trees. The forest was no longer a prison, but alive, teaching her to observe rather than dominate. She realized her obsession with control had mirrored her approach to life, fighting every current instead of moving with them. Weeks passed, and her dreams shifted. She wandered through cities glowing under impossible skies, streets folding like ribbons, rivers glimmering with colors she could not name. Faces from her past appeared, not to harm, but to guide: her grandmother, a childhood friend, even strangers whose kindness had once touched her life. Each encounter offered a lesson: patience, forgiveness, courage, and empathy. Julia began to see the dreams as teachers, not challenges, and she began to carry their lessons into her waking life. She reconnected with old friends, mended fractured relationships, and let herself feel emotions she had buried for years. Then came the dream that changed everything. Julia found herself standing on a cliff under a sky of swirling violet and gold. Below, a storm-tossed ocean roared, waves crashing against jagged rocks. She tried to command it, to summon safety, but the storm refused. Panic rose, but she remembered the forest whisper, "Let go." This time, she obeyed. She walked forward, feeling the wind and rain against her face, acknowledging fear without trying to banish it. Slowly, the storm softened, the sea calmed, the sky cleared. She understood that control was an illusion. The dream, like life, was to be embraced, experienced, and learned from. In subsequent nights, Julia explored worlds more magnificent than she could have imagined, deserts of glass where wind shaped the dunes, mountains that sang in the colors of sunrise, oceans that reflected the cosmos. She confronted versions of herself she had ignored, the anxious girl who feared rejection, the angry teen who held grudges, the hopeful child who still believed in magic. Through these encounters, Julia learned empathy, resilience, and the courage to forgive, not others, but herself. Her waking life transformed alongside her dreams. She started writing and painting, translating her nightly journeys into stories of hope and self-discovery. She laughed more freely, loved more openly, and embraced vulnerability rather than perfection. She no longer sought control over outcomes but found joy in connection, in exploration, in the unpredictability of life. One night, Julia entered the most extraordinary dream yet. A vast meadow stretched to the horizon, bathed in golden sunlight. Rivers reflected the sky like liquid crystal, flowers swayed in unison, and the air hummed with a gentle melody. She walked barefoot, feeling the warm mth of the grass, her heart light for the first time in years. Figures appeared, Mark, friends, family, strangers who had touched her life. Each radiated understanding, forgiveness, and love. Julia finally realized the truth she had been chasing all along. Mastery is not found in control, but in surrender, trust, and presence. If Julia's journey has touched your heart, I ask you to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Engage with this story and help it reach someone who needs hope. And before we finish, leave a comment sharing a dream or a moment when letting go changed your life. It might inspire someone in ways you cannot imagine. Julia's nights became sacred, spaces for reflection and discovery. Her days bloomed with authenticity, joy, and connection. She painted, wrote, and shared her insights, spreading hope and understanding. She had learned a profound paradox. The more she tried to control life, the more it eluded her. The more she surrendered, the freer she became. Her story teaches that our dreams are mirrors, revealing our fears, hopes, and hidden truths. By embracing them, we discover courage, love, and the extraordinary capacity to live fully. Control is tempting, but surrender transforms. And in that transformation, we uncover the self we were always meant to be, whole, free, and alive.